Welcome back, my friends. The news today is that China has slammed United States for adding firms to export control list. China has vowed to take retaliatory action. China's Ministry of Commerce said on Sunday it strongly opposed a U.S. decision to add multiple Chinese entities to its export control list over Russia-related issues. The United States on Friday added 105 Russian and Chinese firms to a trade restriction list over their alleged support of the Russian military. But, before we get into all of that, I would like to thank everyone who views my videos. If you would like to support the channel, please see the link to buy me a coffee in the video description below. And, please hit the like button and leave me a comment below. I would love to hear from you. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you are notified of upcoming videos when they are released. China's Ministry of Commerce said on Sunday it strongly opposed a U.S. decision to add multiple Chinese entities to its export control list over Russia-related issues. The United States on Friday added 105 Russian and Chinese firms to a trade restriction list over their alleged support of the Russian military. The companies, 42 Chinese, 63 Russian and 18 from other countries, were targeted for reasons from sending U.S. electronics to Russian military-related parties to producing thousands of Shahed-136 drones for Russia to use in its invasion of Ukraine. U.S. suppliers must get difficult to obtain licenses in order to ship to companies on the entity list, as it is called. China's ministry said the U.S. action disrupts the international trade order and hinders normal economic exchanges, adding China would take necessary measures to resolutely safeguard the legitimate rights of its companies. The trade war between the United States and China began in 2018 when then-President Donald Trump imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, aiming to address what he described as unfair trade practices and intellectual property theft by China. In response, China imposed its own tariffs on U.S. goods, leading to a series of retaliatory measures from both sides. Key points of the trade war: the U.S. imposed tariffs on over $360 billion worth of Chinese goods. China retaliated with tariffs on more than $110 billion worth of U.S. products. The tariffs increased costs for businesses and consumers in both countries. The uncertainty surrounding the trade war affected global markets and supply chains. In January 2020, the two countries signed a Phase 1 deal. China agreed to increase its purchases of U.S. goods by $200 billion and strengthen intellectual property protections. The U.S. agreed to reduce some tariffs but kept many in place. Despite the Phase 1 deal, many contentious issues remain unresolved. The trade war has highlighted broader concerns about China's state-led economic model and its impact on global trade. The trade war has had significant implications for both economies and has influenced global trade policies and relations. The main areas of disagreement between the U.S. and China span several critical domains. 1. Trade and tariffs. U.S. concerns. The U.S. accuses China of unfair trade practices, including intellectual property theft, forced technology transfers, and state subsidies to Chinese companies. China's response: China argues that the U.S. is trying to curb its economic rise and protect its own industries from competition. 2. Technology and cybersecurity. U.S. concerns. The U.S. has raised issues about cybersecurity threats and the potential for Chinese technology companies, like Huawei, to be used for espionage. China's response: China denies these allegations and views U.S. actions as attempts to stifle its technological advancements. 3. Human rights. U.S. concerns. The U.S. criticizes China for its human rights record, particularly regarding the treatment of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang and the political situation in Hong Kong. China's response: China considers these issues as internal matters and accuses the U.S. of interfering in its domestic affairs. 4. Geopolitical influence. U.S. concerns. The U.S. is wary of China's growing influence in regions like the South China Sea and its Belt and Road Initiative, which aims to expand China's global economic reach. China's response: China asserts its right to develop and expand its influence, viewing U.S. actions as attempts to contain its rise. 5. Economic policies. U.S. concerns. The U.S. criticizes China's state-led economic model, which includes significant government intervention and support for state-owned enterprises. China's response: China defends its economic policies as necessary for its development and argues that different countries have different paths to economic success. These disagreements have led to a complex and often contentious relationship between the two countries, impacting global trade, technology, and geopolitical dynamics. The trade war between the U.S. and China has had significant impacts on several key industries. 1. Automobiles. Impact. The U.S. automotive industry has been heavily affected due to increased tariffs on vehicles and parts imported from China. This has led to higher production costs and, consequently, higher prices for consumers. Example, U.S. automakers like Tesla faced increased costs and had to adjust their pricing strategies. 2. Technology. Impact. Tech companies, especially those involved in semiconductors and electronics, have been vulnerable due to their reliance on Chinese manufacturing and sales. Example, companies like Nvidia, Micron Technology, and Intel have experienced disruptions in their supply chains and increased costs. 3. Agriculture. Impact. The agricultural sector has been significantly impacted, with China imposing tariffs on U.S. agricultural products. This has led to reduced exports and financial strain on American farmers. Example, soybean farmers, in particular, have faced challenges as China is a major market for U.S. soybeans. 4. Consumer goods. Impact. Many consumer goods, from electronics to clothing, have seen price increases due to tariffs on Chinese imports. Example, retailers have had to navigate higher costs, which often get passed on to consumers. 5. Manufacturing. Impact. The broader manufacturing sector has faced disruptions in supply chains and increased costs for raw materials and components. Example, companies that rely on Chinese parts and materials have had to find alternative suppliers or absorb higher costs. These impacts have led to increased costs for businesses and consumers, disruptions in supply chains, and shifts in global trade patterns. The trade war between the US and China has had profound effects on the technology sector, impacting various aspects of the industry. 1. Supply chain disruptions. Impact. Many tech companies rely on complex global supply chains, with significant manufacturing operations in China. Tariffs and trade restrictions have disrupted these supply chains, leading to increased costs and delays. Example, Apple, which assembles many of its products in China, faced higher production costs and had to consider diversifying its manufacturing locations. 2. Restrictions on technology transfer. Impact. The U.S. imposed restrictions on technology transfers to Chinese companies, particularly in sensitive areas like semiconductors and telecommunications. Example, Huawei was blacklisted by the U.S., limiting its access to critical components and software from American companies like Qualcomm and Google. 3. Increased R&D investments. Impact. To mitigate the effects of the trade war, tech companies have increased their investments in research and development to innovate and reduce dependency on Chinese manufacturing. Example, companies like Intel and Nvidia have ramped up their R&D efforts to develop new technologies and maintain their competitive edge. 4. Market access and sales. Impact. The trade war has affected market access for tech companies, with both the US and China imposing restrictions on each other's products. Example, American tech companies like Microsoft and Google have faced challenges in accessing the Chinese market, while Chinese companies like TikTok have encountered regulatory hurdles in the US. 5. Strategic shifts. Impact. The trade war has prompted tech companies to rethink their strategies, including diversifying their supply chains and exploring new markets. Example, companies are increasingly looking to countries like Vietnam, India, and Mexico as alternative manufacturing hubs. These impacts have led to significant changes in how tech companies operate, innovate, and compete globally. But, what do you think? Please hit the like button and leave us a comment below. We would love to hear from you. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you are notified of upcoming videos when they are released. Please share this video on social media. And, before we end, a word from the sponsor of this video. Today's sponsor is ProWorldNet.com. ProWorldNet.com is a job website specifically dedicated to licensed professions, doctors, including any type of specialty nurses, and that includes all grades of nurses. Lawyers, regardless of area of legal focus. Teachers and professors, from kindergarten through graduate school. As well as any kind of job that requires a government license or certification. And ProWorldNet.com also includes short-term gig-type jobs as well. So, be sure to check out ProWorldNet.com if you are looking for a job or an employee. Thank you for watching.